Hello and welcome to the final stage of the Digital Swiss 5 over on Rouvy. Today's stage goes from Camperio to Disentis Sedrun. We've got 37 kilometres of racing to do today, and the main features of today's stage are two climbs, the first of which begins a couple of K in for around 15 kilometres. Then we have around another 15 kilometres of descent before we hit the final 6 kilometres rise to the top and the finish line, and what will be the end of the Digital Swiss 5. I'm your host, Kira McVitie, and I'm here in the studio with Jacob Hennessy, pro cyclist for Canyon DHB. We've actually been setting up Rouvy just before we got on to this live stream, and Jake made a little video about it, so here that is.
I'm Jacob Hennessy. I'm a pro cyclist for Canyon DHB, and I'm going to be taking part in the Tour de Suisse fan race on Rouvy. All you have to do is download the app, open it up on your device, and then just click register and you'll be ready to race. Okay. So we now have the turbo trainer on, just calibrated my own power meter and also calibrated the turbo. With races, especially e-racing, you're not really going to want to eat during the race because it's going to be a full out effort. They're never really more than an hour. So it's a good idea to try and get some food in maybe 3 hours before. And then once you're warmed up and you're ready to go, it's just a case of grip tight and hang on and enjoy. So, get out.
Welcome back. So we're here for stage 5. Today's going to be one potentially more for the climbers. How do you reckon your chances fare today, Jacob?
Stage 1 was, I think, 1,200 metres climbing, 26k. Stage 3 was 1,500 metres in 36. Today's a little bit kind of in between the two. It's 1,000 metres climbing over 37k, so it's going to be one of the ones where it's like, it is going to be fiercely hard, but it's, I've got no real gauge as to how hard it will actually be. I feel like I'm definitely going to struggle, especially for this first 15k of climbing. Hopefully try and pull back something on that descent because it's a good 15k of descent again. And then just try and like leave it all out on the last climb. But I saw that the pros were doing it in about an hour. So it's again, another hour TT. An hour.
Something that many of you watching may not know is that Jacob has actually competed in every single stage of the Digital Swiss 5. This is the 5th and final day for you. Legs tired much?
Well, I do feel tired now. It's just like racing. The people in the UK will know, but it's like racing a crit every day. Just 1 hour, absolutely flat out, and doing it on a turbo. I'm kind of in pieces as well because you tend to use muscles slightly differently, and also just the effort of sitting in the saddle.
It's very static.
Although it maybe looks like I get out the saddle a lot on the live streams on Insta and YouTube and stuff, but I'm actually, compared to what you maybe would do in a normal race, it's nothing because you spend probably 3/4 of the race, half the race out the saddle just through effort out of corners and things. But on this, obviously, there's no corners. It's just a case of try and put the power out and hold one consistent effort.
So Alex Dowsett actually alluded to this earlier in the pro race. He was kind of talking about what it would be like if the pro riders rode every single stage. Would that change the tactics of the race? Would that add a different dynamic to it? I think it's quite an interesting point because we've seen in the pro race, the sports directors have chosen their 3 riders based purely on the parkour of that day. And there was only, I think, the most amount of races any of the pros did was 2 of the 5. So it's interesting to think about that as to what that would look like if the pros did race every single day of the Swiss 5. What do you think?
I feel like again the pros. Speaking from someone who's done a lot of sort of like 1 hour races as well, I don't think it'd be phasing them too much there because they're so used to riding that consistent fatigue and things like that. And it is just a mental game at the end of the day. Like you do feel bad day in, day out or you have your good days and your bad days. I think maybe if every day was ridden and raced how it has been, I feel like maybe you'd see a few more faults in some of the riders. You know, Dennis smashing it stage 1 and 5, Kung as well smashing it as well on yesterday's stage and the other flat stage. So those sort of time trial efforts, maybe you might see a slight wobble from one of them. But yeah, it's hard to say because they are the best in the world. So they are good day in, day out because that's what they train for. So.
Yes, talking about the pro race, we've just got up on the screen there the top 3 finishers in the pro race. Rohan Dennis, obviously infamous time trialist and world time trial champion. I think more than once, double world time trial champion. Yes. Second place was Nicholas Roach, who actually won one of the previous stages of the Digital Swiss 5. Really good time trialist in his own right. And there was only 10 seconds between Roche and Dennis today. So really amazing ride from Roche to finish in second place. And the lesser known rider in third place has to be Jonas Vingard from Lotto Jumbo. Really impressive ride there. He's obviously a climber and probably a perfect domestique, I imagine, for the likes of Roglic in the Grand Tours and that kind of thing.
It's definitely something interesting about the platform because you do tend to see these people that maybe wouldn't win the road races but can still put out the big power on the turbos. I think it's a weird one because you see Roglic the other day and he was suffering away, and you see some riders that maybe you would expect to finish, well, you'd almost guarantee to finish behind Roglic on a mountaintop, but on a mountaintop on Rouvy, Roglic was, he was still up there, but he was riding with Kwiato, and you'd expect Roglic to just ride off.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. But obviously, the likes of the Grand Tour GC riders, they are good time trialists, but potentially not used to that hour flat out power like the likes of, say, Dennis. But, we did see in the stage earlier, there are actually a lot of climbers, maybe, potentially domestique climbers and time trialists all mixed in together. Dennis was only the true time trialist in that top 10.
What you do forget, though, is all of these riders that are up there. Jonas Vingard he's not just turned pro from nothing. He would have been winning races before he turned pro. He's maybe just stepped up to that level and realised that come a Grand Tour, he's not as consistent as someone else over the days, or, at a classic, he's not quite got that tiny 10% that he needs at the finish. But they're all class riders in their own right, and they're all definitely capable of getting up there in most races. But you put them in a pro race and you've got to have that something extra to sort of appear at the front end. Nicholas Roach and Rohan Dennis, who you're used to seeing on the top steps of podiums and kicking around in the top 10 in most races, they sort of do. But maybe the lesser known riders, it's a good time for them to shine on something like this.
Definitely. This is a platform that benefits the stronger hour power riders, time trialists, climbers. Do you think that there's any sort of tactics when it comes to this sort of racing, or is it just a pure case of what is your FTP?
It's a lot of, the thing is, it's like anything, because it's like playing a game. It is just playing a game and learning to play the game properly. So you see it on, for instance, like F1 and things like that. You get a Formula One driver go on the game and they get beaten by someone who just knows how to play the game. Doesn't mean they're necessarily a better driver, just means that they know how to play the game, as well as obviously having some pretty quick reactions. But bringing that back to cycling, I think some people who maybe practice more on the turbo or are more used to doing races like this, you see Jimmy Whelan, for instance, starting off super strong. He's been doing a lot of online racing, so he's obviously clued in and ridden the turbo enough to be able to show himself.
And we did hear, of course, yesterday from Zdenek Sebar, multiple cyclocross world champion and infamous classics rider, that because he's based in Belgium, he barely ever rides on the turbo at the moment, and they have the luxury of being able to still go outside and train. So he himself said that it was a disadvantage that he's not used to riding on a turbo and used to doing any of the indoor races. I think, in fact, that Digital Swiss 5 was actually one of his first ever indoor races. Back to this fan race then, and we have about 4 minutes until we head off. It's going to be an interesting one today. We've got 382 starters, and just having a quick look through the start list earlier with Jacob, we noticed that there was many riders from all over the world. We had over 22 nationalities represented in the pro race. There was at least that in this race too. And varying ages and abilities. You can go on the start list and see what people's FTPs are.
Well, it's really open racing. It's allowed to everyone. It's just a fan race. Anyone can get involved. Anyone can take part. All you have to do is download the app on race.rouvy and get involved. And like you say, myself, I'm 23. There's a lot of other riders on here. We had a few under 23s racing the last couple of days. And also, like you say, there's some people in their 50s, 60s who are taking part. And 380 riders, it's quite a varied group, but everyone's giving it their best and just getting involved.
As we've seen in previous races from the gun, it's a case of the fastest riders come to the forefront, obviously, but you can see the little icons of all the riders spread out. Some of the riders are still making their way up the first climb when you guys are coming towards the finish, but it is a case of doing the best effort that you possibly can whilst you make your way through this race. One for the climbers today, we head pretty much straight up a 15-kilometre climb. The Lukmanier Pass is going to be the first big hurdle. It's going to be some beautiful wild scenery up there as well. Not that the riders will have much chance to have a look at that. And this is a pass that's going to feature in the 2021 Tour of Switzerland. So it's great for us as fans to be able to see what the pros will have to endure in next season's edition of the race. Obviously, we'd have liked to have been this year, but we're quite glad that it's going to be continuing next year. And it's good that we've got something virtual that can take place of the Tour of Switzerland at the moment and give us some entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just any racing, anything for especially people that are into cycling or into the characters of cycling, just watching and seeing the people that you want to see. Julian Alaphilippe back out racing today, but everyone getting involved and doing their bit, and it's kind of what the fans want to see. It's what the sponsors want to see, and at the end of the day, that's basically all it is. It's just entertainment. So I think it's a really good move from Rouvy and Tour de Suisse, and I think it's a step in the right direction to do something in this time.
And I think it's great to incorporate, obviously, the pro race earlier in the day and then the fan race. So you get to ride on the same route and the same roads as the pros do earlier in the day, and you can actually compare for like.
You can see how you could ride this first 15k as hard as you wanted, and just see how you compare to someone like Rohan Dennis doing a TT. And where else can you really do that? I mean, there are apps on your phone where you could ride a climb that someone's done previously, but not on the same day, straight after.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting dynamic to this Digital Swiss 5, and we hope that they bring out some new races for us to follow in the coming weeks and months. So I think that would be really, really good. So later on today's stage, we've also got an interview from the sports director of Bora Hansgrohe. His name is Christian Schroet. It'd be really interesting to get his insight onto what the riders are doing in this time, how the virtual racing kind of fits into their calendar and so on. But until then, let's get to the start, because we've only got 10 seconds now until the riders are underway for their 37-kilometre effort. And we're going in 5 seconds. Get ready for it. Up, 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 up. And here we go. It is a flat-out effort from the start. Over 400 watts for Jacob Hennessy at the moment. And it's going to be a fight to the first split, which comes almost straight away in a couple of kilometres. Let's have a look at the front then. We've got G. Garcia leading the way, kicking out 10 watts per kilo I saw there. Desprez in second at present, but at the moment there's only a couple of 100 meters between the top 20 or 30, and we're coming up to split one in around 200 meters. G Garcia kicking out 8 watts per kilo in the lead. He has about 10 meters on second place at the moment, and G Basson in third, not far behind as they come up to split number one. 740 watts for G Desprez, I saw there. He has gone out hard, but like we saw in the pro race, the likes of James Whelan, in pretty much every stage he was riding, he was kicking out massive power at the beginning, but then sadly dying off more towards the end. So we've seen that pacing is vital and super key for these races, particularly because, you know, they're going up this Lukmanier Pass now. They've got a 15-kilometer climbing effort. So potentially hitting out at 10 watts per kilo at the start is a bad idea. So G Basson in third place, 6.2 watts per kilo, and riding strong, only 30 meters or so between himself and the leaders. The leaders seem to be calming down somewhat, back to around 6 watts per kilo at the moment. This is still massive amounts of power. Jacob beside me in the studio is in 14th position, riding at 5.2 watts per kilo. And I know for sure that it will be all about pacing for Jacob today. This is the 5th of the 5 digital Swiss 5 races he has done. And it's another hour at threshold.
Can't wait.
I think he secretly enjoys it in a sick kind of way, as many of these riders do. We've seen numerous riders come back for more pain every single day. G Desprez won stage 2, I believe. M Smith is back for more. T Hanlon is back for more. There's quite a few actually in the top 10 who were featured in previous rounds of this race. So they're obviously enjoying it and enjoying testing themselves over the beautiful Swiss roads. We're on board with Jacob at the moment. He's in 12th position, but I imagine he'll start to pick people off as they haven't paced their efforts as well. You can see M Smith just in front of him, riding a good tempo in the red and green jersey there. There's a group of riders just in front of Jacob as he moves into 11th position. There's not much between all these riders in the top 10 at the moment. Only 100 meters between Jacob and the first position at the moment. So it's going to be a case of who's got out too hard and who can sustain their effort to the end. So we've been through split number 1. Split number 2 comes at around 11 minutes of riding done for the pros at least. The pros were riding at about 6.2 watts per kilo consistently at this point, and we saw James Whelan from Cannondale leading the way through this point and pressing on up the climb. He is a good climber, and I think he enjoys a lot virtual racing. He's done quite a bit, I've heard. So split 2 will be the next point of interest for us on this course from Camperio to Disentis. Split 2 is about, I'd say, a third of the way up the Lukmanier Pass. So it'll be kind of the first place that we can really assess the key protagonists in this race. It's not a brutally steep climb. We're at about 6%, 6 to 8%, but it just kind of hangs at around that 6 to 8% for the whole 15 kilometers. So indoor racing then, for a lot of you who've maybe not seen much indoor racing, you can get involved with quite a few of these fan races. And I know that Rouvy have numerous online races that you can get involved with. All you have to do is download the Rouvy AR app and you can check out the races there. I still believe they have their 30-day free trial. So you can go on there and experience loads of different routes from all over the world. But also you have the opportunity to take part in races just like this. And for more info on the races, you can head to race.rouvy.com. All you need to have is a indoor training setup. I believe for the races you need a smart trainer or a power meter so that you can have your data put into the software and it'll tell you where exactly you are compared to your competitors. Jake's setup at the minute is a Wahoo kicker, and thankfully we managed to borrow a fan from my family because the first stage he actually found out firsthand that riding with no fan, particularly in our setup here at home with a few studio lights, was very uncomfortable, a bit too hot. And we were actually looking at Jake's power data before we came on, and he reckoned that the difference between his power versus having a fan and no fan was around 30 to 40 watts over the hour, which is insane. That's a huge amount of power that you don't want to be losing out on. So definitely recommend getting a fan if you're going to get involved with these indoor races. But it's a great opportunity, particularly at the moment. A lot of us are stuck at home, to give Rouvy a try and test ourselves on some of the most amazing and iconic roads from all over the world. Back to the racing, Jacob has moved up into 7th position. And let's do a run through of the top 10. We've got G. Desprez in 1st position, riding at 6 watts per kilo. G. Basson in 2nd. M. Weiss in 3rd. HB Kruger 4th. And in 5th is Gilliam Garcia. 6th, Thomas Hanlon. 7th, Jacob Hennessy. 8th, Matt Smith. 9, Tim Ray, and 10, James Forey. There's a few from the Pro Touch Continental cycling team and 2 Swiss riders in the top 10. I wonder if they know these roads firsthand, but it's nice that everyone here can experience the real roads from the comfort of their own home. We're coming up to that split number 2 now, only a handful of kilometres until we get there. It's interesting to see how much power these riders are laying down so early on in the race. And for many of them, this will be the 2nd or 3rd, and for Jake, the 5th race that he's done in the last few days. So it's going to be a tough press all the way to the top. The riders at the front are really putting the hammer down. G. Desprez pulling away from 2nd. He has around 300 metres at the moment. But I don't think it's all lost for G. Basson in 2nd place, because remember, this is, only 4 kilometres into the whole race. They've got well over 30 kilometres left to go. But the first climb will really be where we see who has the good legs today. But G. Desprez just eating up the road in front of him and still holding over 200 metres advantage on 2nd place. We saw earlier in the pro stream many of the World Tour professional riders getting involved with this amazing virtual race series, the Digital Swiss 5. And one of the things I noticed about it was that a lot of the riders were opting for a lower cadence than you'd normally see typically on the road. And a lot of them were riding out of the saddle, which when I was speaking to Jake earlier, he was saying that the reason is because when your smart turbo adjusts to the altitude and the elevation of the climb, you're actually able to deal with the torque of those climbs much better when you're out the saddle. I suppose it's quite similar to actually being on a steep hill in real life. Often you do have to get out the saddle to put the power down to make it up some of the climbs. So it's interesting to be able to see that firsthand from the live stream earlier today. What's great about the Digital Swiss 5 is that you, the fans, have the opportunity to race on the same roads as the pros. Earlier in the day, we saw Rohan Dennis taking the win in the pro race in a time of just over an hour, I think it was. I've got my notes here. 59 minutes and 28 seconds. Rohan Dennis took the win in. So it'll be interesting to see how close the fans can get to that winning time. I don't think they'll best it. Seems as Rohan Dennis is double world time trial champion. It'd be a little bit suspicious if these riders were beating him. But it'd be interesting to see how close they get. And it's a great way to test themselves against some of the world's best. I mean, Rohan Dennis arguably, almost definitely is the world's best at an hour flat out. He's proven that twice before. We see our leader go through split number 2, Guy Desprez from France, in a time of 11 minutes and 15 seconds. Very impressive stuff. And G. Basson, around 300 metres behind him, will be taking that split number 2 very shortly. The gradient's around 5%, 6% into this split number 2. So still biting and hurting the legs. Following Jacob Hennessy, now he's riding at 5.2 watts per kilo and still going strong up to split number 2. He's out the saddle and he can see T. Hanlon in 6th position, only 20 metres in front of him. It'll be interesting to see what these time gaps look like once we reach the top of this climb, but actually still very close in the top 10. Only 200 metres behind Jake is 10th position. So it's all to play for at the minute as we head up the Lukmanier Pass. It's a very popular area for hiking and mountain biking all around the Lukmanier Pass. And I believe it's not too far from the start of the River Rhine, I believe. I'll just check my notes. Yeah, so the finish of today's stage, Sedrun is very close to the Oberlapp Pass and the source of the Rhine, which is one of the biggest rivers in Germany, I believe. Back to the racing then. Jacob Hennessy still in 7th position, but closing down on 6th. T. Hanlon will be very shortly joined by Jacob, only 14 metres between them now. It's going to be a close battle to the summit. Another close battle also kicking off between 4th place and 3rd at the moment. H. Kruger, riding at 5.8 watts per kilo, is only 15 metres behind M. Weiss on the road. He'll be able to see him in his sights and gradually try and eat into that advantage. Only 8 metres between Jacob in 7th and T. Hanlon. The battle still rages on as we come up to 5 kilometres of racing completed. The top of this climb is at 1,930 metres of altitude. They won't be feeling the altitude today on their indoor trainers, unless, of course, they are at home somewhere where there is altitude. But this is still going to be a gargantuan effort all the way up this climb. So we'll take a quick break for the moment and we'll be back with the racing after this advert. Welcome back to the action. You've just missed Jacob Hennessy take 6th position off T. Hanlon. And M. Weiss in 3rd position is still holding on to that 3rd position, but H. Kruger in 4th is making the charge, only 40 meters behind. It's going to be a long effort up this climb, but G. Desprez leading the way over 500 meters to the good on G. Basson. Oh, and there's a problem for G. Desprez there briefly, but he seems to be back. We saw actually earlier in, numerous of the Pro Digital Swiss 5 races, riders experiencing Wi-Fi dropouts and so on. And the commentators on the stream coined it an electronical, so not a mechanical, but an electronical. He had a brief electronical there, but he's managed to get back on his way and is still pressing on, leading the way up the Lukmanier Pass. The next split will be split number 3. We saw the likes of Dennis leading the way through split number 3, and Jimmy Whelan fell away at this point about 10 kilometers in. As we saw in many of the races previous to this, James Whelan has a startling 20-minute effort, but then can't quite hold on. But the likes of Dennis and Roche were starting to move up into the top positions. And as we went through split 3, we saw Dennis, Schachmann, Vingard, Jai Hindley, and Roche up into 5th, as they took split number 3 in a time of 23 minutes and 18 seconds. It'll be interesting to see how these fans compare as they head up to the 10-kilometer mark. They'll know once they pass through split number 3 that there's only about 5 kilometers to the summit of the climb, and it'll be all or nothing to the top. One thing to bear in mind with Rouvy racing is that on the descents, if you're able to get up to a speed of 72 kilometers an hour, you're actually capped. So you can't go any faster than 72 kilometers an hour. So there's effectively a speed ceiling, as it were, which means that on the descent, you're actually be able to ride at slightly lower power than you're kind of stuck at that speed until it starts flattening off and plateauing, which adds another dynamic to this race that perhaps people won't know about. The second climb of today is only 6 kilometers, but it's going to be a really, really painful one, because this climb, it's not just 1% of elevation or a gradient, all the way up to the finish. It actually goes up in ramps. So, you see it going up to 10% and then down and then up again. So it's going to be really one to test the legs. And as the riders have these smart trainer devices, they're going to be making it harder and harder as that elevation and gradient goes up. So it's going to be a really hard 6 kilometers and a difficult one on the legs to deal with those ramps. So in not too long, we are going to be having an interview with Christian Schroet, sports director for Bora Hansgrohe. The Bora Hansgrohe team had 3 riders in today's earlier pro race. They had Ida Schelling, Matteo Fabro, and Max Schachmann was their best placed rider, who came in 5th position. He actually had a storming ride at the start and made his way up to 2nd position, I believe, at one point, but was unable to hold on to the pace of the likes of Dennis and Roche. But it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on how the likes of Max Schachmann did and how the teams are going to prepare for potentially 3 Grand Tours at the end of the year and a handful of classics too. So it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on that. Looking at the screen, now Jake has moved into 6th position. He's holding strong and riding at around 400 watts at the moment.
When split 6 for 3.
So split 3 is at 10 kilometers of racing done. The pros went through there in 23 minutes and 18 seconds, or at least Rohan Dennis did. And the top 10 in the pro race were all within a minute of each other coming through that split. So it was all to play for. It'd be interesting to see the time gaps between the top 10 in this race as we go through that point. But for Jacob, there is only just over 2 kilometers until we hit split number 3. Just having a look, Disentis riding at 6 watts per kilo has only 1 kilometer until he hits that split 3. He's 1 kilometer from split 3. Out the saddle for Jacob, pushing hard as we're on board with M. Smith, also riding very well at around 350 watts and 4.5 watts per kilo consistently. He's got B. Groen has M. Smith in his sights. It's going to be a close battle for 9th. They're both riding at a similar watts per kilo. But I think the advantage is potentially to B. Groen. He has M. Smith in his sights, and he'll be able to just peg back the distance between them over these remaining kilometers of this climb. So the gradient is actually starting to ease off slightly. And as we come into the last few kilometers of this climb, around 12 kilometers in, it's going to ease back to around 2-3% gradient, which is going to be a false flat, a faux plan to the top. We all know those horrible false flats in real life when we're out on those training roads can be so demoralizing. It's going to be a mental battle as much as anything coming up the final few kilometers of this climb. But with this indoor racing, the whole thing really is a battle of the mind as much as it is a battle of the legs too. We're just going to go through split number 3, and then very shortly after that we will be joined with that interview I mentioned earlier with sports director from Bora Hansgrohe. Disentis riding at 4-5 watts per kilo takes split number 3, and let's see what the time is. 23 minutes and 37 seconds. I'm just having a look to see. He's only 30 seconds down on the time of Rohan Dennis.
Only 20 seconds down.
What did I say? 30. Sorry. I have my glasses on, but
Rubbish at maths.
I'm not great at maths. So don't worry about me. Let's see. M. Weiss is in second place, riding very strongly, but has around 500-600 meters until he crosses split number 3. Let's have a look for the time. Jacob is coming into the last kilometer until that split, as Guy Desprez leads the way and is destroying his competition at the moment, putting over a kilometer into M. Weiss, who's second on the road. So we'll be back very shortly after a quick ad break with the racing action. So we're joined now by Christian Schroet, Sports Director for Bora Hansgrohe. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks. Fine. Nice meeting you here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. I hope you don't mind us picking your brains for the next few minutes. I'm just wondering, how is your team finding doing the Digital Swiss 5?
Yeah, we had a pretty nice start into this. We did not do it before, so it was all new for us also, and was quite a nice experience for us.
Lovely. So how are you guys, what are you recommending to your riders at the moment with their training? Because obviously, some riders are stuck at home, some can go outside. So what's your advice for the riders?
Yeah. The situation is very different alongside Europe. So it's the place where the rider is living. We try to keep focused and motivated, even if it's tough. And we are looking forward to the race season starting. And we are still busy preparing everything and being ready when it starts off.
Exactly. So as a sports director, potentially we're going to have, 3 grand tours at the end of the year, maybe a handful of classics. How do you prepare for that many races, potentially all at the end of the year?
Yeah, in the end, we have a big squad, so 27 riders. Not everybody can go for all races, so we're gonna split this, and I think it's possible. In the end, it will be a pretty short and intense season, and yeah, we are working on this. But finally, we have to wait till we have the real go for the first races to come.
Yes, of course. We all hope that they're not too long now. As sports fans, we really do miss watching the amazing races. The Grand Tours, the classics. Obviously, at the moment, there's not much going on. I'm just wondering, do you have any other virtual races in the pipeline for the team?
In the moment, not. We just started off with this, and but more requests are coming. And as long as we don't have real races in place, it's gonna probably happen. But we have to wait for the next weeks, and if there are opportunities for the team, then we're gonna join for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think the riders enjoy doing the indoor racing?
It was a complete different experience, and they said it was pretty tough. So in the end, it's a big time trial, and it makes it a lot suffering for the riders. And yeah, but for the moment, it's pretty nice because at the end they don't have racing, and you have something in between to get focused. And I think it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we can see firsthand right next to me the suffering that the riders are having to endure. So obviously you had Max Schachmann earlier coming in 5th position. Are you pleased with how your riders are getting on in these races?
Yeah, he did quite a nice job today, and we were very satisfied with this. He wanted to test himself a little bit, and did a quite good pacing throughout the whole race. And in this kind of off-season period now, it's pretty good and impressive numbers he put out on the road. So we are quite happy. Yeah.
How do you do your sort of team tactics going into the race, and also do you change your team selection based on the parcours?
In this race, you mean in the online race?
Yeah, so in the online Digital Swiss 5 series, how is your kind of tactics for each race worked?
Yeah. We looked out for the different stages. It was not exactly the same than on a real race, like it's very specific planned for one guy. So here it was more selected upon the race and more open. But in the end, yeah, we tried to evaluate the riders who fit into the parcours. And for the tactic side, it's a little bit difficult because in the end, it's more a time trial, so you cannot really play big tactics with drafting or something. But yeah, we tried to find out good pacing for the riders, and they all did good, I think, and it worked out pretty nice. So.
Yeah, they all did really well. Max Schachmann 5th place there. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you are looking after yourself, and we wish the rest of the team well. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. The best for the riders now racing, and hopefully we can restart soon. And thanks for your time, and enjoy it.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. So Christian Schroet there, some great insights from behind the scenes with Bora Hansgrohe. Max Schachmann earlier today actually took 5th place, did a storming ride in the pro race, just outside the podium for 5th position. Let's have a look at the fan race there. Not much movement in the top 10. G. Desprez leading the way in 1st, 2nd M. Weiss, 3rd H. Kruger, 4th G. Basson, 5th Tigo Star, and now in 6th position, Jacob Hennessy. They're onto that faux plan, false flat at the top of this Lukmanier Pass. It really opens out into some barren mountain landscapes as they make the final push. It's around 2.5 kilometers left of climbing for Jacob at the moment. So we've got some information about the winner of the competition. Every day on the Digital Swiss 5, the riders have been taking guessing the time of the pro. Oh, sorry. That was yesterday's competition. Today's competition was guessing the average speed of the race. I'm just waiting to see who the winner is. So the winner of today's prize, who gets a Rouvy bundle, is Watermelony4, which is their Instagram handle. I guess they like watermelons. She guessed 38 kilometers an hour, and the speed, the actual average speed, was 38.15. So very good guess there. They go home with Rouvy socks, Rouvy bead on, and Rouvy jersey. So great work there. Lovely. Back to the racing, and we're coming up to the final 2 kilometers of this climb. Moving at pace towards the next split, which will be split number 4. Split number 4 comes at 15.7 kilometers in. It was at this point in the pro race that we saw only 30 seconds between the top 5. They hit split number 4 at 32 minutes and 42 seconds. And leading the way was Rohan Dennis, followed by Schachmann, Vingegaard, Roche, and Hindley. That was the top 5 at that point. So Schachmann did an amazing ride, holding on to second up until the halfway point. But we saw in the end, he wasn't able to hold on. So 32 minutes and 42 seconds is the time that these riders will want to be getting close to. Be interesting to see as M. Weiss comes up to this split, what time he does when he goes underneath the banner. There's the banner. It's going to be around 35 minutes as he passes through. You can see him coming across the line now. Let's have a look at the split times then. Marcel Weiss from Switzerland, doing it for Switzerland Cycling Unit. 2 minutes down on the winner at 35 minutes and 37 seconds as he takes that split. Impressive stuff as we see 3rd place, H. Kruger, head under this split. He's only 300 meters behind 2nd place, leaving it all to do for the final climb. Jacob is about to see that split as he comes around the corner. He'll see the banner, and it'll be a big push to the line so that he can start taking advantage of that descent. The riders will get some respite on this descent because Rouvy is capped at 72 kilometers an hour. That's the speed ceiling. So you've just got to get up to that, and you won't be able to go any harder based on your power. So you can hopefully get a little bit of rest before we hit the final 6K climb to the finish. So following Jacob now, he's about to come out the tunnel and he'll see the banner for split number 4, 15.7 kilometers of racing at this point. There's the banner. Here we go as he crosses through the banner, 3 minutes 39 down on the leader and around 50 seconds down on 4th place. It's going to be a case of getting it up to speed on this descent and seeing where everyone ends up as we come to the foothills of the next climb. Amazing scenery as we come down this descent. Not that the riders will be having a look at the views. It'll be a big press as they get up to 72 kilometers an hour, and it can slightly enjoy the views as they come down into this valley off the Lukmanier Pass. You enjoying the views? No, I didn't think so. Jacob is into 5th position, a kilometer down on G. Basson. 450 watts I saw there for a second on Jacob's screen. He won the race yesterday, but today's parkour I don't think suits him quite as well. He's more of a kind of classics rider, sprinter, all-round rouleur. So the climbs aren't going to be his favourite, but he's still doing an amazing ride in 5th position. But he can't rest on his laurels because Tigo Star is only 400 metres behind him. He's taking full advantage of the 72 kilometre speed cap down this descent. You can see his heart rate dropping to around 140 beats per minute and going down at the moment. So he's starting to get some recovery in. And I know that Jacob does enjoy a short and sharp climb at the end. So can he retake some positions on his fellow competitors? It seems that the top 4, just looking at their power numbers, maybe aren't aware of the 72 kilometer speed cap. I can see G. Basson still riding at 4.5 watts per kilo there. So maybe they're not as informed as Jacob going into this race. But if they watch our commentary, they will no doubt find out. On board with H. Kruger as he hits the flat, or actually it's still slightly downhill, minus 3% gradient, which is going to be nice. The legs are going to be getting a small amount of rest as he rides at 4.5 watts per kilo and comes through the next split at 20 kilometers of racing done. It was around 20 kilometers in that we saw Roche move up from 4th position into 3rd, taking it away from Vingard. And Shackman still in 2nd place at around 20 kilometers in. So there wasn't much movement on the descent, but it all started to change position as we hit that final 6th climb. That's where the race will be decided after all. But we're well into the descent now. Descent's about 15 kilometers long as well. So once we hit 31 kilometers, around then will be the bottom of the descent, and it's all up from there. The final climb goes up in ramps towards the summit. It's going to be a hard one to pace because of the variability of the gradient. It's not just a straight 8% climb. It has peaks of up to 10% and then goes down to 4% and up and down and up and down. There's going to be a tough one to time your effort all the way up that. I think it's difficult with the smart trainers. They almost feel like they're grinding to a halt on those steeper gradients. Jacob getting a bit more respite then as the climb pitches down. Minus 8% gradient. And Jacob has gone through split 6 in 42 minutes. He's starting to make some ground on 4th place, G Basson, potentially due to a good knowledge of the Rouvy racing. So we can see G Desprez pushing well ahead. Let's have a look at split 8 then. Guy Desprez leading the way in 40 minutes and 13 seconds. Absolutely insane. Marcel Weiss in 2nd place from Switzerland Cycling Unit, 2 minutes down. But the race for 2nd is heating up because HB Kruger is only 18 seconds behind Marcel Weiss in 2nd place. 3rd place, HB Kruger from Pro Touch Continental is also followed by his teammate, Gustav Basson, who's only 15 seconds behind 3rd. So 2nd, 3rd and 4th are really close at the moment. Only about less than a minute between them all, which in this late stage of the race after that 15-kilometer Lukmanier Pass is very, very impressive. Jacob is about to hit split 8. 3 minutes 30 down. He's got about 40 seconds to make up on G Basson. So this race, as we mentioned earlier, is one for the climbers, one for the time trialists, but it's not as hilly as we've seen on previous stages of the Digital Swiss 5. Only about 1,000 meters of elevation gain over the stage. It's interesting to see in these Rouvy virtual races that it does seem to favour the really good watts per kilo riders and the good kind of powerhouse time trialists who just have a lot of power. I would say that Jake probably falls under more of a classics type rider, but he can still do a good time trial. And I think a 6-kilometer climb at the end might actually suit him. You know, he's not so good at the really long climbs, such as the 15-kilometer climb at the start of this stage. But that 6-kilometer climb might be short enough for him to do some damage and to potentially move up further in the standings. So G Desprez seems to be running away with the title today. It'd be interesting to see if anyone can make any ground back on him on the next 6-kilometer climb. Just one thing to note, there isn't actually a general classification for the Digital Swiss 5, which Jake, I'm sure, will be gutted to hear. There are only winners on each stage. So it's all or nothing every day to see who can take home the winner chicken dinner. As we come down the Lukmanier Pass, we see lots of these quintessential Swiss houses with very pointy roofs. I imagine they probably do quite a bit of skiing here in the winter. Lots of mountains around. Good for cycling, good for hiking. And a great place to take the tour of Switzerland. 25 kilometers of racing done. That means we're coming up to the last 10 kilometers of this race. Oh, so it seems that Guy Desprez is doing 0 watts per kilo at the moment. I'm not sure what that means. Potentially he's hit that maximum speed, so he's just taking some respite, or he's having an electronical. We don't know just yet. We will soon find out, though, as he hits the flat in a couple of kilometers. I think he's just freewheeling down this hill as he goes through the tunnel. We'll only get to know once he comes out and starts taking that gradient uphill. Interesting. Second on the road is M. Weiss, running at 4 watts per kilo. He's still putting out the power. H. Kruger in third, not far behind him, followed by G. Basson and Jacob Hennessy. Jilling, T. Hanlon, Big Rowan, Negrini and Tigo Star round out the top 10 at the moment, but it's still all to play for coming towards the last 10 kilometers to go. So G. Desprez is still riding at 0 watts per kilo. Is that just part of the descent? Yeah, he's still descending. He's still descending, minus 11%. So he's taking full advantage of the descent. As you can see, his avatar getting aero there as he takes the corners on this sweeping downhill. I imagine this would be quite a good descent in real life. It looks quick. Back on the gas then for Jacob, riding at 5 watts per kilo. I imagine this is really hurting the legs. 48 minutes of racing done. We know that they're aiming for around an hour of racing, or just over. We saw Rohan Dennis in the pro race finish in a time of 59 minutes and 28 seconds. So I imagine that for these fans, it will be a case of just over the hour. Jake gets a little bit of rest as he hits that 72 kilometer ceiling on the speed, and his little avatar goes into the aero tuck. He gets a nice little bit of respite. He takes a drink. It's really important with all these indoor races to stay cool, to stay hydrated. I think often you forget how much sweat you can lose on an indoor trainer, even if you do have a fan or something like that. We saw in stage 1, Jacob didn't have a fan, and at the end of the stage he was actually having to wring out his clothes from the amount of sweat that had gone into his socks, his shoes, and all of his cycling kit. He lost about 4 kilos, is that right, just in water weight in day 1 of the Digital Swiss 5. So I can't imagine he'll be losing quite 4 kilos now that we've got a fan. But still, even if it's a kilo or 2, that is a significant amount of water to be taking on board. You know, some of the pros were saying that they were taking on 3-4 bottles over the duration of one of these Rouvy races, which is just completely insane. You think, you know, they're racing Tour de France stages of 6 hours, and, you know, some of those days that they won't have that many more bottles on a 6-hour tour stage.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Oh, maybe they will.
They'll have about 10 bottles on a 6-hour tour stage.
But
Also,
for an hour,
stage?
4 bottles is a lot.
Not sure what stage is 6 hours, but yeah, they definitely they take on a hell of a lot more water than your average club rider. But it does get hot on the turbo, and you kind of forget it because you're so into what you're doing. I'm making the most of this platform and knowing it now. But I now know what I've got to come. and what I got to do to the finish. This is going to hurt.
I think we're definitely going to have to invest in a turbo mat. I'll be getting Jacob out with the mop after we've done, because like you say, you do lose a lot of water in sweat as you're doing these indoor training efforts and races.
A lot of it's just knowing the platform well. So for instance, the first day I had no idea I could do this. So I was still doing 400 watts trying to sprint downhill, not looking at the speed. But now, like, I'm down to 125 beats, which from what I was doing when I was sat at threshold power, and it ramps up again, you get a real significant rest. It's almost like doing a few different efforts. So I'm back into the last one. This one's going to hurt.
Jacob has just hit the bottom of the final 6K climb. It's going to be a big push, but he knows that looking from the parkour that it's going to go up in ramps and there will be some slight respite as he goes up the 6K climb. But it's a tough one to pace because of those variable gradients that we're going to see. You're tuned in to the fan race. This is race number 5 of the Digital Swiss 5. From Camperio to Disentis Sedrun, pardon me. I always find in these live streams, you know, pronouncing the names is sometimes a little bit difficult, but you'll have to bear with me as I work on my pronunciation. We can see Jacob 5 watts per kilo, 170 meters down on G Basson. G Basson in the white kit with the green stripe has H Kruger in his sides, only 60 meters between them. The teammates will be fighting it out once again to see who wins the race of the best Pro Touch Continental rider. So leading the way in the women's race is E. Boros from France, riding at around 3 watts per kilo. She's 19 kilometers into this stage at the moment and enjoying the full effects of the descent towards this next climb. She's got a few people in front of her. I'm sure she'll be wanting to pick those off as we go. She can see Elle Thevenin 50 meters ahead, and just a little bit further up the road is Jay Person. So she's got some carrots to chase as she comes down this descent. 54 minutes of racing done, and we're coming to the grippy part of the race, the final 6K climb. So we've got 54 minutes done. At around 54 minutes, the pros had completed 34.8 kilometers. So I can see that Jake is around 2 kilometers down on those professional riders. And we saw that there was only 100 meters at this point between the top 3 in the pro race, which is absolutely insane if you think, you know, over 37 kilometers, that they're all still so close together. And we saw Roche really making the charge up this climb to try and defeat Dennis. I think in the end, he managed to get within 12 seconds at the finish line, which was really, really impressive. So as we go up this climb, the riders are going to be trying to maximize their watts per kilo. Watts per kilo, of course, is the amount of power that you can put out to your weight. So if you want to improve that, you've got to improve your watts, and that usually comes in the form of consistent training, or you've got to shift a bit of weight and therefore reduce the amount of watts that you have to put out for your weight. But often the best bet with any of these things is consistent training and hard work to put out some of these higher watts per kilo numbers like you're seeing from the front runners in this race. Five watts per kilo is a huge amount of power being put through these pedals. I'm just thinking back to when I used to ride full time. You know, I couldn't ride at 5 watts per kilo for an hour. You know, I'd be kind of looking at around 4, maybe just over 4 watts per kilo in my prime. And I think, you know, your average sort of club rider is probably only able to ride consistently at around 3 or 4, maybe 5 watts per kilo for someone who does a bit of racing. So for these guys in the front, they're clearly people who have done a bit of racing, riding at over 5 watts per kilo. So it really shows the consistent training and hard work is what's going to lead to the higher power and doing better and better in these races. I've not actually had a chance to ride around this area in Switzerland. I'm quite enjoying checking out the scenery here as we go through towards Sedrun, which is where the stage finishes today. Doesn't look like there's much wind. The flags aren't blowing that much. And we're starting to hit one of the next ramps for Jacob. It's at 3% at the minute, but we can see the road starting to ramp up. It's going to go up and up and up. And we come to 4 kilometers of racing roughly left for Jacob and his fellow competitors at the moment. Disentis is well ahead, destroying the competition. He's about to come up to the next split, riding away in the purple jersey. He's about to come into the last kilometre of racing. I think perhaps he'd have been better in the pro race with power like that. So 1K to go for Disentis. He comes under the kilometre to go banner, the Flamme Rouge. And he knows that it's a final push to the finale for Disentis. Blisteringly quick time of 58 minutes and 29 seconds as he goes through there. Six watts per kilo still and riding away. Disentis. He's not going to be far off the time of Rohan Dennis, to be honest, as he comes towards the finish line. Bearing in mind, Rohan Dennis completed the course in 59 minutes and 28 seconds. And Guy Desprez from France is I mean, going to be within a minute to Dennis. I'm not sure I quite believe it, but we're watching it anyway. Guy Desprez coming into the last kilometre. Starts to flatten out to the finish. You'll be able to see it now. All or nothing to the line. It's a maximum effort for anyone when they get in the last kilometre. The hammer is down. The touch paper has been lit. And he's coming into the last 500 metres of this race. He'll be able to see the banners and the 200 metres to go signs. He's coming towards it now, 200 metres to go. He's clearly taken the victory here, over a kilometre ahead. He'll be able to sit up and enjoy this victory as he rolls across the line very shortly. 50 metres to go. And the winner of race 5, Camperio to Disentis Sedrun of the Digital Swiss 5 is Guy Desprez in a time of 1 hour and 45 seconds. That time would have put him in the top 5 of the pro race, just to let you know. Second place, Marcel Weiss is 1 kilometre or 2 down, so he's coming underneath the Flamme Rouge. The kilometre to go. And it'll be all or nothing as he tries to hold off H. Kruger, only 200 metres back. 6 watts per kilo, and Weiss hits as he comes towards the finish line. He's stomping on those pedals, trying to hold off the chase from H. Kruger. We can see H. Kruger trying to hold it above 6 watts per kilo, and he's taking some distance out between himself and second place. But it's all too late, it seems, as M. Weiss comes into the last 500 metres of this race. It's still climbing up to the finish, 4% at the moment. And we can see M. Weiss riding at 6 watts per kilo. Really impressive stuff. Let's go to Jacob Hennessy now, who's beside me in the studio, but also following him on the screen. He's riding at around 400 watts, and he knows that this effort is only a few minutes until its completion. He can see the kilometre banner just in the distance. It's just round this corner. It's going to feel like purgatory these last few metres as he gets out the saddle to push on for home. M. Weiss is coming towards the finish line. He'll be able to see the banners in not too long. He'll come just round this corner and he'll be able to see 200 metres to go. He'll be looking forward to seeing that finish line as it marks the completion of this phenomenal effort he's putting in here. 6 watts per kilo and 400 watts, 420 watts. He's almost there. He'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief as he comes into the finish line. 6.6 watts per kilo, that's all he's got left. A brilliantly paced effort from M. Weiss as he takes second place, around 2 minutes and 40 seconds down on the winner. H. Kruger isn't that far behind and is about to come in third place. Let's see what the time is as he crosses his line. H. Kruger into the final 100 metres. Seems these riders have paced their efforts well. They don't have much of a sprint left to the finish line. It's just a case of holding on for dear life. H. Kruger wins the battle then of the Pro Touch Continental riders, finishing in third position. Gustav Basson, an impressive ride though, hasn't lost much and is about to finish now. There he goes through the finish line, only 18 seconds down on his teammate. As we see Jacob push for the finish line now, he can see the 200 metres to go banner. It's going to be an impressive effort by Jacob to cross the line and have completed every single stage in this Digital Swiss 5. We'll be able to get his thoughts very soon once he finishes this race. 380, 400 watts. It's just a case of getting through that finish line now for Jacob. 100 metres to go. 6 watts per kilo. Impressive ride by Jacob there as he eases off the gas and finishes in 1 hour and 5 minutes and 19 seconds. That was a gruesome effort there, 4 minutes down on the winner. It'll be great to hear Jacob's thought on the stage after. We'll give him some time to get his breath back, of course.
Oh, okay.
So 6th position, Gilling is heading towards the finish line. He is around 700 metres down on Jacob. But it's been a really solid effort today. 1,000 metres of elevation gain over today's stage, which in 37 kilometers, that's a lot of climbing. But Jacob holding his own into 5th position on the stage that didn't necessarily suit him that well.
God, that was hard.
But I think
but I couldn't have got anything else out. I just sort of hit a limiter today, where I kind of managed to hit my power that I wanted to do, and then had that in my head, which was good. But then I didn't feel like I had anything extra to maybe even accelerate. I basically just rode at the same power when I was riding, and didn't really go too much harder. But like now, I'm not even out of breath. I'm just kind of tired. It's just more the leg pain than the actual cardio pain.
I mean, how did today's stage compare to the previous 4 that you've done?
Well, the thing with the other stages, the 2 flatter stages, it's all about your own sort of willingness to push yourself. But on the hilly ones like this, it's kind of not really up to you. It's more the decision of the terrain. So you don't really have your decision to go, okay, I'm going to attack now. It's more like, right, well, if you've got the legs, you have to go. But I just really was sort of sat at the limit of what I figured I'd be comfortable or able to do for. I knew it was going to be another hour of flat out effort, and I was kind of unsure how that last climb was going to be, because it's very hard to see on elevation like this when it's stretched out as it is for what it is. You can't tell how steep that is going to be. So I knew roughly in my head what sort of percentage it was going to be, but how hard that was actually going to be, that was tough. It was a lot steeper at the bottom than I was expecting. It caught me off guard a little bit, but I was sort of just hanging on to the position I was in. I was sort of settled, and once you got over that first climb, with it being 15 kilometers, you were kind of stuck with what you got after that, to be honest.
Well, very impressive stuff. I hope you've enjoyed doing the 5 races on the Digital Swiss 5. Just to let you know, if you want to join in with some of Rouvy's races, they have loads to choose from. If you head to race.rouvy.com, you can get involved. You also have the opportunity to ride routes from all over the world, and they've still got a 30-day free trial, so you can go and check out the routes there.
Get involved on race.rouvy.com, download the app.
Jake was riding in China the other day.
Do the 30-day trial, and if nothing else in this time, it's just good to give something else a go. And you can do, if you're a UK rider and you know what these are, you can do the top 100 climbs. They're on there. That's a sort of epic thing. There's also a lot of sportifs that are on there, like really famous ones from the UK. You can climb Stelvio, you can climb all the famous climbs, and it gives you sort of just something else to do rather than just, sitting around.
So what do you think the best way to get into this sort of racing is for people?
So I think, the key thing is to get yourself a smart trainer. Direct drive's definitely sort of the best way to go. You can do it on a normal
trainer. Yes.
Yeah, you can do it with a normal trainer, but the smart trainer's the best way to go. But just get yourself a laptop, tablet, something like that. Just download the app and get involved.
Or your phone. You can do it on your phone.
Do it on your phone. Just get involved and really just start off and just see where it takes you. If you want to do some racing, do some racing. But it's just exciting to try and, ride a road and actually have something in your sights to aim for rather than just ride the turbo aimlessly. So
I think the races are good. We've heard from pro teams and pro team sports directors this week that actually having those races and seeing those avatars on the screen is great for motivation for all the pro riders. And as much as it is motivation for them, it's motivation for us mere mortals as well to keep training and to test yourself against riders from all over the world.
I think it's really good to do this sort of thing now because it's just something to take your mind off the monotony of training. If you're training for your big event, say your goal's been now moved, you can only really do what you can do. So this is a really good way of getting the intensity in. And for me, doing these races, it's just an hour as hard as you can go, which is very hard to really do outside on the road under your own steam. Whereas if you've got a carrot to chase, it's always good.
So how are you using the indoor training to kind of supplement your fitness and that sort of thing now?
It's not really. It's just one of those. It's a good part to. So this time of year with my team, for instance, we'd normally be doing the crits in the UK. And the crit series is normally a really big thing, and it tends to be something that once you've finished, you're either in bed really ill because it takes so much out of you, or you're flying. So I find these 1 hour races really good for me. So I try and do quite a lot of high intensity. You see it now with your Mathieu van der Poels and Wout van Aerts. You know, they're using cyclocross during the winter just to keep that bit of speed and bit of power. So I think it's just great to sort of mix it up and not just spend 4 hours, 3 hours riding steady. You know, you've got to practice going fast if you want to go fast. So.
Very well said there, Jacob. So thanks so much for joining us on the Digital Swiss 5 fan race coverage. We hope to see you back in another Rouvy race soon. If you want any more info on the app itself or the racing, head over to rouvy.com. But for now, thank you very much and see you next time.
Why are we all in? We were born this way and keep going. We stick together, discover and dare together. We share good times, sore times, and party times. We're the wild boys, the legends, the mothers of awesome, and we belong together.
Join us at welovecycling.com. Skoda, simply clever.